There we go. Getting set up, starting a couple minutes early just to make sure that I um, don't squirrel brain. Hi, there we go. We are all connected. All right, so welcome to Evylyn Rose's Lunar Lunch Break. This is my weekly Monday Q&A session, talking all things tarot, witchy, spiritual topics. I am Evylyn Rose. I'm an empowerment guide and tarot reader. Empowerment guide kind of sounds a little like a cheerleader. Not totally wrong. So except without the cheers, because anybody who knows me knows I am coordination challenged and it is not pretty. That said, my goal is mainly to help support holistic well-being. My background is in healthcare and psychology, um, as well as several other industries as your stereotypical millennial. So I've been in military, I've been in government, all those good things. So my focus as an empowerment guide is mainly filling that gap, bridging that gap between our physical, mental, emotional health as well as our spiritual health, kind of focusing on the spiritual health aspect to help integrate or weave together the whole of those four primary aspects of our overall health. Um, Unfortunately, we are pretty terrible about doing that these days, and there are many people out there who attempt to fix that. Unfortunately, I am becoming increasingly alarmed by some of the various coaching programs out there that train coaches, and then people go on believing themselves to be fully educated, certified, trained to be in that dynamic. Um, and what we're finding for those, it's not just myself, some of my local politicians, local healthcare and mental health care professionals, so psychiatrists, psychologists, as well as various specific modalities within medicine. We're kind of having those same concerns regarding this because what we're seeing is that it's not so much all the training is bad. It's that it's very narrow focused. It's very while simultaneously very broad. Like it doesn't go deep enough into actual medicine, into actual science, into actual psychology, and into how to actually help and support people in these areas. Because one bad piece of advice can be like fatal in some instances. It's not always necessarily that bad, but it can be. And so there is this real push for getting a little bit more transparency, potentially a little more regulation in those industries. And I am highly supportive of that. And part of my hopes in these pursuits as an empowerment guide is to be helpful in supporting that, both as somebody who is in that esoteric spiritual place, and that's kind of my emphasis, and also with that background in both medicine and psychology, to make sure that as those regulations and policies get made, that we aren't going so far with it that we kind of take that balance, and it's currently imbalanced with that lack of regulation and making it so regulated that it kind of creates more problems than it solves. So I'm hoping to be kind of a voice of reason to help bridge those worlds together so that we can better help with holistic health. Um, so anyway, again, welcome to my Monday weekly Q&A sessions. I did start a couple minutes early. I am learning that these Monday sessions, being only 30 minutes, if I don't start right at 1 p.m., then I end up going over an extra 10 minutes. So if I'm looking at the clock and it is like 12:57, I'm just going to go ahead and start the stream, even if it's just a couple minutes of me just giving a longer than usual introduction. So if you are here, thank you so much for joining me. Our lunar lunch break sessions are Q&A sessions. I generally prioritize any questions that come up in my chat. I am streaming through Restream, so I am technically not on Twitch. I'm technically not on YouTube, but I'm streaming to both platforms simultaneously. So the chat I see might be a little different than what you see if someone starts chatting on one platform and you're on the other platform. You may not necessarily see what's in the chat. So I do try to make a point of um, reading out what I see in the chat just in case you're on one of those other platforms. And if you're watching this as a replay later, you may not know at all what I'm talking about, and all you can see are comments or lack thereof. So all the more reason that I do try to make sure that if any messages do come up in the chat, I do try to read them out, so anybody watching the replay as well can benefit from that. So again, questions that we typically answer are things dealing with all things tarot, any witchy related topics, so modern day witchcraft, or even if you want to get into historical stuff, we can take that deep dive, although I do not claim to be a historian. I'm just nerdy as all get out and know entirely too much stuff. um, so we could touch on it, but I'll definitely recommend other resources if you ever ask me anything that I'm not the person for that question. I will definitely hook you up with some resources. Um, Also, anything dealing with spirituality in general, as you may have caught at the opening of this, I focus on the spiritual health aspect of things as an empowerment guide. So all things spiritual, even if they're outside of that tarot or witchcraft specific lens. And then just general practical practices, ways to blend a little bit of spirituality into our daily lives, because daily lives today are very busy and chaotic. Best way to get your questions answered during this Q&A session is to drop that question in the chat. I do prioritize what's in the chat. If there's not anything actively in the chat, I do have questions that people have asked me either through email, through social, bumping into me in person and saying, hey, can you answer this? And I just make a running list of questions, and then I try to get to as many of those as I can. And then in between answering those questions, I prioritize anything that's in the chat. Since you are here right in this moment, I'm going to prioritize your questions. Let's see. Anything else I need before I get started? Oh, if you are new here, just quick reminder, this is meant to be more of a relaxed and conversational Q&A session. If you're looking for somebody who's going to do tarot readings live and on the spot, this is not that session. Not to say that I don't ever do that, but that is not what these weekly Q&A and AMA sessions are for. And as you can tell, I usually start with a quick update while people are finding the stream. Since I kind of started a little early, I kind of preloaded that, so we'll dive straight into these questions. And real quick, I'm going to say this again at the end, but if you haven't already, please remember to subscribe to my channel. That just lets you get a notification during the moments I do go live. Especially with YouTube, that's a little tricky on setting up the schedule in there because I'm not streaming directly through YouTube. So it kind of was causing some issues using the schedule through that platform. So the notifications, the subscribing through YouTube is the best way to get the notifications when I go live. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive into questions. There's not anything in the chat just yet, but feel free to drop any questions in there. If I say anything, go too fast, need me to clarify, just pop it in the chat and I'm happy to take a look. All right, so I have a couple questions that were asked that I'm gonna try to get to as many as I can. There's quite a few, but this is a shorter session, so we'll see how it goes. First one is, how do I find my spiritual path or tradition? And the short answer to that is, let it find you. Um, that would be the quickest, shortest answer to that. But let me elaborate because that's not the most helpful standalone advice. So when it comes to spiritual paths and traditions, whether within a specific religious framework or uniquely your own, it is something that comes together over time, and it can evolve over time. So our spiritual practices, our spiritual paths are not these stationary things. This is why we refer to it as a path. It is not something that stays static. You're not staying in one place. So while there is definitely that kind of like find your tribe kind of guidance out there, find that community, that the people who get you. Um, while yes, seek those things out. In terms of our spiritual path, it's more about finding the path to get on, and know that it can shift, it can change. You can get on that path and hop back off. You can get on that path, think you're going to go to the left, and then suddenly veer to the right. Um, its spiritual paths just work that way. Life has its ups and downs, as well as its curves and loop-de-loops and tons of spirals. um, so there's no necessarily finding it. This goes back to what I had mentioned in a previous session about this idea of like having labels and labeling your path. And don't worry about the labels, especially if you are new, if you are starting out on your spiritual journey. um, you do not have to have a distinct label. You will find it. It's okay. And then whatever label you end up deciding to use to describe your path, you will likely change it throughout the course of your life, even if the path itself remains relatively the same or similar. The name you give to it might shift and change. It's okay. Um, it's one of those it is what it is things. Um, so yeah, so and for your question for how do I find my spiritual path or tradition, it's not something that you have to go out and find. It's not going to be like look under the bridge, pick up this rock, and then underneath the rock there it is. Like it's not a thing that's that quick and easy. It's going to be an exploration. It's going to be a journey. It's very much that the Fool card in the tarot, where you've got that figure that just kind of sets out, got backpack over the shoulders, going to just kind of go with the flow. There may or may not be a cliff ahead, and looks like they're going to fall to their doom, but you never know. There may be a staircase there. Um, there may be a swimming pool below or inflatable. I think that would be awesome to think you're going to go over a cliff and then there's an inflatable bouncy house or something. That would be fun. Anyway, I digress. The point is, it's a journey. So take your time, explore. If something resonates, take a deeper look into that, explore that part of the path. If it doesn't resonate, leave it alone. Maybe it'll resonate later, maybe it won't. Um, but the best way when you're starting out is just to explore, just to learn, be open. Um, take note of those things that do rub you the wrong way or make you question or kind of give you the ick feeling. Just jot them down and be like, something about this doesn't feel right. And that could be something that you need to work through yourself, or it might be that there's just something about that particular path or teaching or approach that is not right or safe or healthy, either for you as an individual or collectively as the human species, if you will. I went full collective on that one. All right. So hopefully that helped to answer your question. And again, if I missed a mark, feel free to reach out by email, or you can always pop something in the chat if you need me to clarify on air. All right. Okay. Still don't have anything in the chat. Again, you're welcome to drop a question anytime. Okay, our next question that came up was, what is the difference between meditation and mindfulness? Oh my, I could devote like at least a solid hour to talking about that alone and still only skim the surface. um, so it's one of those, it's both easy to answer and can get really complex depending on what you mean when you say mindfulness. So meditation itself tends to refer to practices that involve specific like focus, quieting the chatter in the mind, helping to focus the brain. In some cases, in some specific meditation practices, it involves silencing the brain. That is not a meditation style that works for me. Meditation can be religious and spiritual. There are meditation practices that are specifically built and intended for a specific religious tradition, uh, like approach, if you will, or style or techniques. But more broadly, it's just referring to those practices that involve helping to quiet and still the mind. Um, and it usually helps to reset the system, if you will, provide some clarity, allow our brain to take a rest while also still kind of busy working. It's one of those weird things. It's kind of like when your computer or your phone's acting up too much, sometimes just restarting it and rebooting it, giving it those few seconds of rest, and suddenly it works just fine, right? And that's kind of what meditation can do. In a similar vein, a lot of mindfulness practices can also be that same way. So this is where we get into the tricky part of answering this question. So if you're just talking about the term mindfulness, mindfulness literally means like the state of being mindful, right? It is, um, I am being mindful of the temperature of the room right now. I am being mindful of the fact that I haven't drank enough water today, so I need to drink some water. That is an example of mindfulness. Um, Being aware of what's here, thinking, being curious about things, all those things can be mindfulness. It is literally the state of being mindful. Now, if you're referring to mindfulness practices and that idea of mindfulness, what we get from the field of psychology, this opens up a much longer explanation of what mindfulness is. So this is going to be the short, condensed version. So mindfulness began years ago within psychology. It started off with a psychologist, I believe was his position at the time. He had been put in charge of like a chronic pain clinic, or that, at least that's what we would call it today. I don't know that's necessarily the exact term of the department. I'm doing this off the top of my head. Please bear with me on some of these details. Anyway, he was tasked with finding a way to help these patients because back then we didn't have as much of the psychopharmacology that we do. We didn't have much of the data and the research that we do to help differentiate between different conditions, what's real, what's not, what's psychosomatic, and what is like actual, like there is a physical thing we can treat, maybe a surgery's in order, right? Um, so you had all these patients who are suffering with pain, and at the time, nothing to be done about it. And so they were like, find something, anything. The the world is your oyster. Have fun. Um, make something happen here. And so that particular scientist was a practicing Buddhist, and he learned from many Buddhist teachers and the particular style of Buddhism, which again, off the top of my head, I don't have the exact term. So bear with me. If you want more information, I'm happy to share resources with you to give you that information. But anyway, he essentially kind of was like, hey, this stuff helped me with stuff. Let's see if it helps them. And so he started to create studies and design studies, bringing in these practices, that included mindfulness within that kind of Buddhist framework. And that was the starting point. And now, um, from there, once we started to see success within, we started to see quantitative data, you had other scientists who were looking at their own spiritual and cultural practices and saying, "Hey, can let's study some of these," and that expanded over time. Um, and along the way, because now we're several decades into this, you also had other organizations. Like I know one that I talk about a lot is I think they changed. I think they changed the name to the Heart Math Institute. They developed their heart-centered breathing technique, which is literally just inhaling and exhaling to the same count. Doesn't matter if you hold, you don't have to worry about holding at the top of the breath or the bottom of the breath. Doesn't matter how many breaths per minute, just making sure that the inhalation time and the exhalation time are in sync. Um, and they can see this heart rate and brainwave sync. So essentially, you're syncing your heart and your brain together. And we know from the studies that came before the benefits of this. And so the Heart Math Institute thing was developed just from studying the heart and the mind and seeing test playing around with breathing and seeing what worked. So it didn't come from any specific religious or spiritual cultural practice. It developed independently of its own. So mindfulness is taking all those overgeneralized, very quick tidbits. That mindfulness is uh, like a culmination of all these different things coming from a blend of um, spiritual cultural traditions that were studied scientifically by either members of those traditions or members outside of those traditions, with the information that was shared with them, and also just independently studying the data and coming up with these practices that just happen to be very similar to those same mindfulness practices we see elsewhere. So it's a whole wide thing, and each individual practice that gets lumped under mindfulness has its own backstory and history. So it's really, really complex. So that's why I said I could talk about this for like an hour. I'm already, I think, almost 7 minutes into talking about it. Um, and so it can get really, really, really complex, which is why I tend to get a little pet peevy when people kind of lump mindfulness as like this big bad thing. It's like it's really not. That's oversimplifying to a degree that is really depressing in a world that is so complex. Anyway, I digress. I digress. So to your question, what is the difference between the meditation and the mindfulness? Applying it to this idea of mindfulness. Mindfulness can include meditative practices. Your meditation practices can include mindfulness elements. My personal meditation practices are a blend of mindfulness and meditation. I've talked before about how the very act of just sitting down with a tarot deck to start shuffling, that alone, it causes me to become focused on where I'm at. So I'm thinking about where I am. I'm feeling my body on the ground. I'm becoming mindful. I'm becoming aware, right? I'm feeling the cards in my hands. Um, that shuffle. I love a good riffle shuffle. And that kind of like immediately kind of tunes me into that. Okay, take a deeper breath. Like it just out of sheer habit already gets me thinking and moving in that kind of way. Um, so mindfulness and meditation can go hand in hand. They are two separate things. In a nutshell, mindfulness is just anything that is mindful. And we know, scientifically speaking, that mindfulness does have improved health benefits. And this is why meditation practices and mindfulness like go together so well, because they are doing some of the same physiological functions, and mental health functions that one or the other would do. But again, this is my broad general answer because this is a Monday Q&A session. We can always dive into that deeper if there's any specific part of it that you want me to pick up on. You can drop that into chat or send me an email. I'm happy to go more in depth if you need me to. Just maybe not in the 30-minute session. All right, let's see. Let's move on. Okay, I don't see anything in the chat. Let's see. Ah, got a tarot specific question. So, what makes a tarot question good versus too vague or too leading? I'm assuming by too leading you mean like when you get the reader who's like trying to get you to like tell you the thing so they can use some like mentalist like gimmicks to get you to reveal your secrets, right? um I guess I'm assuming that's what you mean by that. If I'm wrong, please let me know. um but I'm going to answer with that assumption in mind. Okay, so the fun thing about the tarot is you technically don't even have to have a question specifically. Um, it really can be just, if I don't have a specific question from somebody and they're like, I just want to know a thing. Just whatever comes up comes up. And I was like, okay. So usually in those cases, I will have a spread that is more general. This is where your popular 3 card like past, present, future, like of and by itself, like that doesn't seem like it would be very relevant if you don't have a specific question to focus on. But what's really fascinating is by setting a contextual meaning for what each card is meant to represent, it helps us as readers to work out um, the specific nuance that this card is trying to say in this instance. Um, that said, having a question can help because deciding on a specific spread, or even if it's a 1 card reading, like I can get a lot more targeted information out if I have a specific question or general area of concern that somebody wants me to focus on. It isn't necessary, but it is helpful. Um, a lot of times, what I will do, regardless of whether the question was a quote unquote good one, is simply kind of like just doing the reading, sharing what I get based off of whatever they gave me, whether their question was very vague or very specific. And I'm just going to give the reading as it is. But then, as after I do all that, or sometimes in the course of it, it becomes a conversation with the other person, and any little tidbit that provides context. Because sometimes for me, I might be reading and I'm talking about a card, and as I'm explaining what's coming up for me, they'll be like, "Oh, it's very interesting that you mentioned this," and they'll say something, and then I look at the card some more and I go, "Okay, now there's a deeper meaning. Now I can take it further." Now, of course, there's also, this is where the reader bias comes in. A lot of times when somebody shares those kinds of details, this is where it gets to that too leading bit. I do have to catch myself, because sometimes the more detailed somebody is in their question, or concern, the more likely I, as a reader, am to get um, to kind of get in my own way, because I have a um, widely diverse background in both knowledge, experience, education, application of said education. So I have a lot to be able to share with somebody without even consulting tarot, without any intuitive insight whatsoever. So I do have to catch myself when they are, in that case, being too leading. They're giving me so much that I kind of get lazy and let you know my typical personality and knowledge just speak. Um, so there is value in not giving that much background when you first sit down with a reader. Not to say it can't come out in the course of the reading, but when you first sit down, you're doing the shuffling of the cards, splitting the deck, and all that stuff. Um, a good tarot question should ideally be, I don't necessarily want to say vague, but more, it can be broad or it can be specific, but without all the details. For example, a question might be, if you're concerned about how you can help a family member who is going through an ordeal, for example. That question alone, like, I can work with that. I can be like, okay, it's vague enough that like stuff might come up and I might like be biting my tongue because I don't want to say anything, and then in the course of the reading they revealed something and I'm like, oh my god, thank goodness, because I didn't want to say that. um and so sometimes information will come up that way without being led to it. Um whereas if you like give me all the details of it, then there's a risk of me being too biased in it. Or if you're going to somebody who is a little on the more grifty side, they will totally take advantage of that information to kind of make it seem like their intuitive skills are higher than what they are. Um, that doesn't, not necessarily a bad thing. It happens to all of us readers. We all do it to some extent. That's just that human nature, human ego, and those biases that in the moment we're not all equally able to address in those moments. So again, to your question, what makes a tarot question good versus too vague or too leading is keep it super simple. If you have a very specific question, concern, try to keep it very simple when you first ask it, and then let the reading unfold, and then you can choose to your comfort level how much to say and how much not to say. Some tarot readers are just going to come out and tell you what they pick up on, and then some, like myself, especially if it is a sensitive subject, we'll kind of hold back a little bit and we'll try to explain it in as many ways as we can to both address what's coming up for us while also not potentially hitting a major trauma trigger, for example. If you've ever looked at my tarot offerings and some of my writing and stuff, I talk about like trauma informed tarot. That's what we're referring to. It's that, like, I'm not going to just go in there and just start saying all kinds of things, because I know that there are certain things that if you come at me and just start saying them, even if they're 100% real, whether or not it's what I need to hear in the moment, how I hear it can make a huge difference in my psychological well-being. Because my mental, emotional, and physical health can all, because again, these are all interrelated, be completely derailed just because somebody wasn't able to word things in a way that wasn't hitting that nerve. So that goes back to, don't be too leading. Um, just try to be broad in your question. All right. Hopefully, again, that answered your question. If I misunderstood what you meant when you said too leading, just let me know. If you need me to redo this question in another session, just let me know. I'm happy to circle back around to it. But please let me know if that helped answer your question or not. Okay, so there were a couple questions I did not get to, so I will have to make sure that we do. Oh, I can answer that one really, really fast. This one I will save for Saturday because I cannot get to that quick enough. But this one I can answer really, really quick. Okay. Are inclusive or modern decks easier to learn from than traditional ones? Yes and no. That really is going to depend on you. Personally, I find the inclusive and modern decks tend to be more reflective of life today. And because it's entirely based on symbolism, and that's the language that speaks to us, symbols that we would easily recognize are going to be much easier to understand. And then over time, as you're learning tarot, you can compare those modern decks with the traditional decks, and you can start to see, like, here's how those symbols have shifted and changed over time. So in that sense, yes, I would say look at more modern tarot decks, especially ones that are more inclusive or more reflective of the world in which you live, the culture in which you live, and your worldview. Those are going to be the ones that are going to be most relevant symbolism wise to what you need to help you learn tarot. That said, there is a lot of value to the traditional tarot decks, and all these modern and inclusive tarot decks are also often, they're very similar. They're still holding the same themes, the same general archetypal meanings. The symbolism has just been modernized to make more sense to us versus people a century or two ago. Okay, or more in some cases, depending on the specific deck. Okay. All right, so look at that. I managed to squeeze in an extra question with no time to spare, but that's okay. All right, so and I do not see any questions in the chat, so I'm gonna go ahead and wrap up there. Um, if you do have a question and you want me to answer it, please feel free to email me anytime. Um, I'm happy to address it in any of my upcoming sessions. Real quick, I want to go over some details. Any links or anything that I mentioned are all in the show notes. If you don't see them right away, just give me a little time. I know YouTube takes like a day, almost a day, for like the video to upload for the replays, but the notes will at least be there. And then the Twitch notes I have to go in and manually add. Okay, so first thing, please make sure if you like anything that I have, make sure to like, subscribe, comment. All these things help other people to find this channel. So the benefit to you is the platform, whether you're using Twitch or you're using YouTube, knows, like, hey, you like this kind of stuff. Here's more of it. So it helps to train those algorithms. It also, subscribing also helps you to receive notifications for when I do go live or when I upload any pre-recorded videos, which there are some coming, just to let you know. And then, of course, liking and commenting on videos, and not just my own, but anybody's videos. It helps people to find those videos. There are many, many fantastic people within the tarot and spiritual communities across the board, globally. And I am always shocked to see where, like, there have been only like 3 views on this video that was so powerful that, like, everybody in these niche communities should see this and hear this, but the algorithms just don't pick it up because not enough people liked it. So when, not just my videos, but other videos as well, if you see any value in them, if you feel like anybody else should experience them, make sure to like, make sure to drop a comment, even if it's just a smiley face. I've seen people do that. Those comments still count in the algorithm of things to say, hey, people interact with this. Let's show it to more people. So please make sure, like, comment, subscribe. Um, if you haven't already, for the tarot, if you're here for tarot related things, I do have a 100% free Tarot 101 with Evylyn Rose. Again, links will be in the show notes. I have designed it for both seekers and skeptics alike. So please take a look at that. That will, enrolling in that does automatically add you to my newsletter. If you unsubscribe from my newsletter, it will not hurt my feelings. If all you wanted was the course, I will be okay. But I just want to give you that fair warning that you will automatically be added to the newsletter if you sign up for it. But you can unsubscribe anytime. Upcoming, nope, hold on, gonna say that. You can always find me on my website. I have multiple, so they'll be in the show notes. And social, I'm most active on Blue Sky, although at the moment I'm kind of taking a mental health break from all the social media to what degree possible. But Blue Sky is the best one to reach out if you're trying to get my attention. LinkedIn and Alignable, obviously Twitch and YouTube. If you're here, you're clearly on one of those two. And that is it. So thank you so much for, new subscribers, see, can I ask this? I'm actually getting ready to wrap up, but if you want to drop your question into the chat, I'll add it to my list. And then on Saturday session, I'm more than happy to get that answered live for you. Okay. All right. Let's see. So, okay, I'm gonna keep going with the close up, but if you want to drop that question in the chat, I will make sure to add it to my list. I'm gonna go ahead and keep going. So again, thank you. This is our time for today. I know these Monday sessions are super short. They're only 30 minutes. Thank you for spending these minutes with me. I hope to see you next Monday for your lunar lunch break. Again, if you haven't already, please remember to like this video so others can find it. And then my next live stream is going to be Saturday at 5 p.m. Eastern. That is an hour-long session, so I do have more time to get to more questions. So please, absolutely, if you have questions, you can either drop them in the chat or you can reach out to me via email or social, and I'm happy to answer those. Until then, please stay curious. Make sure you subscribe to the Starlight Circle so I can keep you in the loop of all the things, and keep radiating hope out into the universe. Okay. Thank you. Have a great, wonderful rest of